another in Washington, D.C., and one in Quincy, Illinois.
That's about it. The best thing would be just, first of all, call the police. They have a line, I think.
They have a line. The police have a phone number for the Center for UFO Studies, but they only report very good cases. Unfortunately, a lot of the cases go unreported just simply because of problems in communication cost.
Okay, line 2, you're on the air.
Yeah, Bill?
Yeah. You're on the air right now, sir. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Sir, yeah, you're on the air right now.
I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One, does the U.S., do they ever suppress any maybe real heavy information about UFOs? And another question, why do the aliens seemingly always contact, say, the peasants in our society instead of, say, someone who could maybe help our society, say, like the lady down in Mexico?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, there's a very good reason for contacting the so-called peasants, and that's explained in our book. But to make a long story short, we don't have anything but peasants in our society. If we landed a 747 in Egypt around, let's say, the year 1, who would we contact? Would we find anybody but peasants, really? Intellectually, you know, there's a problem in communication. They're so far ahead of us that we all appear to be the same intellectually.
And there's another problem there too. Yeah. Allegedly, many of the heads of state have been contacted, and they have not moved on the information. And if you were president and you got this kind of information and you took it to the council and said, "I think we ought to do this," the council would all say, "No, I don't think that you should, because of," and then they would give you the reasons, panic, etc., etc. And I imagine that it's true that many presidents have sat on this information. It is no longer being sat on. There is no more cover-up. This is absolutely true. What has happened is they have declassified all of the classified stuff and put it into the Library of Congress under document numbers. There are millions of documents, and all you have to do is go through them and find the stuff.
President Carter, I think everyone knows, had a sighting, what, a year ago or 2 years ago?
About 73, possibly.
What is the story on that?
He just saw a UFO. I really don't. You know, he didn't have a close encounter. He saw a UFO at a distance. I don't really know what type.
I think the whole town saw it. It was seen by many.
Okay. Line 3, you're on Open Up.
Yes, I have 3 questions I'd like to ask. I'd like to know about the encounter that Eisenhower had with high government officials out in, I believe, someplace at Edwards Air Force Base with UFOs. I'd also like to know about a bunch of bodies that have been found out in Arizona that were found with a craft that had crashed. And I'd also like to know what you can tell me about George Van Tassel and what you know about his experiences. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Second question was interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, I can't tell you anything about Eisenhower. I've heard a little bit about that alleged meeting, but I know nothing about it. I was never interested in following up on it. About the bodies that are supposed to be in Hangar 18 at Edwards Air Force Base, we have no evidence that there's anything to that story. It's possible, but I have personally spent, $500 in long-distance phone calls trying to track down someone who really could authenticate that story. I've come very close, and I have some very hot leads, including an Air Force general, and it just hasn't materialized yet. I don't know whether the bodies are there or not. I can't answer that question.
What was the story? There was a spaceship that had crashed in Arizona?
Crashed about almost 30 years ago is the story, and bodies were recovered and are still at either Wright-Patterson or Edwards Air Force Base.
Preserved.
To say we can't prove it. Now, the third question about George Van Tassel, I know him very well. In fact, I saw him in the Atlanta airport about 2 years ago. I've been out to his place a couple of times. In fact, I spent a week with George getting to know him. And to tell the rest of the listening audience who George is, He is one of the early contactees of the 1950s who started a publication about what he learned from the UFO occupants. He also built a machine in the desert that cost about $80,000 to build, that he said they told him to build, and they'll leave it there, and when time was right, they'd come back and calibrate it for him and turn it on, and it was a device to allow travel in time, in addition to other things. There's no way of telling whether this thing is real or not, but I can say that George displayed the seeming telepathic ability that I have witnessed in hundreds of cases, and the information that he got in this seeming telepathic manner correlated to a very, very high percent with the general information that's obtained all over the world. Therefore, I do believe that George is acting as a channel for UFO information. I can't say that the Integratron, the machine in the desert, is anything but a large chicken coop, because it never has done anything. I mean, someday maybe these troops will land in a UFO and say, all you have to do is this and this, and it'll run.
But it is sitting there.
It's sitting there. You can see it. In fact, you can see it from 33,000 feet as you go into, or 31,000 going into Los Angeles Airport, just as you start your descent. If you look down to the right, when you're on the localizer, you can see the Integratron, if you know where to look. It's a big white building. Looks like a radar dome.
Line 4, you're on Open Up.
I wanted to ask about the television station being taken over in England, and ask Don Elkins whether if he knew that had been explained. And I also wanted to ask if he knew anything about a visual phenomenon around Franklin, Georgia, about 10 or 12 years ago. And I wanted to ask him about if he had heard a report that Charles Berlitz, who wrote a book about the Bermuda Triangle, was back in the Bermuda Triangle supposedly investigating a pyramid supposedly in the Atlantic Ocean. And also, I'd like to ask him if he was familiar with Patrick Flanagan and if he knew maybe what he was up to now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Hope you remember all those questions.
Yeah, okay, I'll answer the one about Franklin, Georgia first, because I don't know anything about it, and get it out of the way. Pat Flanagan, I don't know what he's up to now. I really don't know what his game is, so I don't know anything about him. I do know the man, and I know about his pyramid investigations. All I know about Charles Berlitz is that he has been reported to be investigating a pyramid larger than the pyramid at Giza in the Bermuda Triangle. And the other question,
TV
which
takeover.
has to do with the seemingly TV takeover in England. This happened about 2 months ago, I believe.
Well, the story was a voice came over.
A voice came over broke into the television picture in a 70-mile radius close to London. And there was a long message to Earthman. Now, the message was the standard message. I've talked a little bit about this message. It correlated. The message made sense. What we don't know is whether the message came from a UFO or whether the message came from somebody on the ground who knew the message and somehow electronically interrupted the television signals. Now, I called a friend of mine, John Whitmore, in London just the day after this happened, and he said he was investigating and working on it. And the last time I talked to him, he said that he thought it was quite possibly the work of an Earth person, not someone on board a UFO.
Okay. Line number 1, you're on Open Up.
Okay, I'd like to know if the Bigfoot mystery, how that ties in with UFOs, and if there are any other entities around the world, and also if there's anyone at Georgia Tech I can contact about UFOs.
Georgia Tech?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I haven't any idea at all about anyone at Georgia Tech. The Bigfoot mystery is related to the UFO phenomena. It's one of the fringe areas. there have been a lot of reports of Bigfoot in the vicinity of landed UFOs. Quite a few reports, particularly in Pennsylvania, have to do with Bigfoot UFO relationships. I'll just give one quick example. And the messages, at least this message that was obtained in the telepathic nature, correlated with the general message. Was this 1970? I believe it was 1973, August, in central Pennsylvania. Around 9 p.m., a dozen farmers observed a UFO at high altitude. It descended and it landed in a field. It appeared to be about 100 feet in diameter, white and glowing brightly. 21-year-old and two 10-year-old boys jumped in a car and went up to investigate. The 21-year-old had a .30-06 rifle. When they got within 175 yards of the UFO, the engine died, the lights went off, the car wouldn't run. They got out and proceeded on foot. Shortly after they got out of the car, they saw two large-like creatures come from behind the UFO and walk beside a 6-foot-high fence. From this, they were able to tell that the creatures were approximately 7 and 8 feet tall. The creatures came toward them. When they got within about 100 feet, they could easily tell that they were Bigfoot type. They were able to later describe them carefully and make drawings, and it was a class of Bigfoot. The 21-year-old fired a warning shot over their heads, but they didn't stop. They kept coming at him. He panicked and fired a .30-06 round directly into the 8-foot one, dead center. Had no effect at all, but the UFO vanished instantly, leaving a glowing ring of light on the ground. He fired 2 more shots directly into the big one. After the 3rd shot, the big one tapped the little one on the shoulder, and they turned around and walked back into the woods. Highway patrol showed up, and highway patrolman could still read a newspaper by the glowing ring of light on the ground. He went up to the woods to investigate, but heard some crashing noises and got a little panicky and jumped in his car and took off. MUFON investigating team headed by Stan Gordon showed up and were questioned all the witnesses. At this point, the 21-year-old who had fired the shots went sort of out of his mind. He started attacking the people around him. He was attacked by his dog. He knocked 3 of the farmers to the ground and sent the dog howling off in the bushes. And when they finally got him down and got him calm, he said, "Don't you see him? He's over there in the corner." And they said, "Who?" And they didn't see anybody. He says, "A man over in the black cape in the corner." And they still didn't see anyone at all. He says, "He's telling me something. He's telling me that if man does not straighten up, the end is near." Well, this is one of the more drastic UFO communications. It does fit in. It's a puzzle piece that fits in. There's a lot more to this story. I can't go into it because it would take more time than we have available in several of these programs. A follow-up study was done by an eminent psychiatrist, Berthold Schwartz, who is a UFO investigator for Flying Saucer Review, the most prestigious London-based investigating outfit. It's a very carefully analyzed thing, and the puzzle pieces do fit. There have been several other cases of Bigfoot being shot, and in a couple of the cases he vanished as if a photo flash bulb went off, just a bright flash of light when he was shot.
When you said this spacecraft vanished from Pennsylvania, how did it vanish? It
Like that.
Never went up, back up or anything?
No, just vanished like that. That happens quite a bit.
That's the time thing?
That's the channel changing that we're talking about.
It's just like you turn the television set off. It's gone.
Okay, more on UFOs right after these words. Don Elkins and Carla Rueckert are with us, and we're talking about UFOs. They have together written this book, Secrets of the UFO. And while we're in the break, Carla mentioned to me that if you have made a sighting, there's an address you can write to. So if you want to get a pencil, what we'll do is give you a couple minutes to get a pencil, then I'll give you the address to write if you make a sighting. But also call your police if that should happen, because if it's valid enough, hopefully they'll get to the right people. And maybe Don and Carl will come by and investigate you. Big question we've been having. How does all this fit in with God, the Bible, the whole routine there?
It's a very important question, and I'm speaking not as a scientist.